Well, good morning, and as you can see, here he is with Stewart's Conversations, and this morning, a very special guest, somebody I've known for years and years and years, who berates me, boxes my ears, kicks my ass for a variety of reasons, but we're still very good friends, is Alex Kirby.
Right.
There you go.
Right. Well, Alex, just as we all live in Lewes, what do you think about Lewes now in the last few days? Well, the last election.
What do I think about Lewes since the last election?
Yeah, the election, yeah.
Yes, well, it's got rid of the Tories, thank heaven.
Absolutely. But what it's got instead is the Green Party, which is, I'm a very green person, as you know, right, so forth and so on. But the Green Party basically is essentially a group of protesters. And like, what's it? The Extinction Rebellion, what's it called?
Extinction Rebellion.
Extinction Rebellion. Both of these bodies have good goals and good aims, but they don't achieve anything.
Really? I'm sorry, I think you're wrong, Stewart.
Right.
I can prove it up now. Extinction Rebellion and the Green Party are two entirely separate organisations. Yes. To say that the Green Party has never achieved anything is absurd, because what about Caroline Lucas down the road in Brighton?
Yeah.
An outstandingly good MP for the time she spent in Parliament.
What did she achieve?
Well, she achieved a great deal, which you wouldn't notice if you didn't see what she had actually done. She got things on the agenda that wouldn't have been on the agenda had she not been there pressing for them.
Yeah.
And I think you're completely out of order to dismiss her as having done nothing. Extinction Rebellion tries to do things. You may say their goals are right, you may say they're wrong, but what they try to do is to achieve their goals by doing things which are going to cause disruption to society in many ways. Maybe they are right in saying that things are so desperately bad that is the only way they can get themselves heard. But they are doing it in an entirely different way from what the Green Party is doing. The Green Party is part of the system, it's part of Parliament. Extinction Rebellion are rebellious.
Yeah. No, but if you look at Lewes, what's happening in Lewes, right? I said, because I'm a little bit psychic, you see, and I said, I bet you that this time the Greens will top the bill. And they did. They get 17 seats. Lib Dems got 15. Labour got 9. So what happened, in fact, is that when Zoe Nicholson became head of the Green Party, her husband, Johnny Iron, decided she didn't want him, so she actually went to somebody at Labour boss of Labour called Chris Charles. So what you've got here is a one-party state in a sense. If you've got the Greens with 23 councillors, and when you try and find out what they've achieved, it's really frightening. First of all, let's think about something like the Charleston fiasco. Did you know about that?
About what?
The Charleston fiasco.
Charleston?
Yeah.
Well, what's happening?
Right. The district council here, run by the Greens, said to the district council office in Southover was given over to Charleston for 5 years, and they only had to pay the maintenance of it. So that's 5 years of 167 it was, that's got £1 million. And so they actually, so having got that, well, the Greens having achieved that, I went with my researcher to company's house, right? And it turned out that Charleston had money in hand of £93,000, £8 million for assets, and 500,000 for revenues. They're running wild in money. They've got all this money, but they don't mess it up. I'll give you even one small example. They recently bought what's the word, dude? Taxi meters, right?
Right.
Yeah. No, not taxi. Meters. What are they? Parking meters. Right. They've got parking meters, but they didn't get the software to actually put them in action. Money gone. And then we had this absolute bloody disaster with the human nature. Yeah?
Right.
The whole thing going on there.
Well, what's going on there?
Well, they're trying to support a great town, green town, down in the precinct. Down the right? And they're making a complete mess of it. I mean, they have, first of all, they want to build 7 houses, they want to do all kinds of things like this gym or that gym, and yet they haven't got any money. And it's really quite, and they talk about affordable housing. Affordable for who? This is all the Green Party. They're doing terrible things. I hate to say that, but
you say they're doing terrible things, but can you give me an example of the terrible things that human nature is doing?
Yes.
I have no idea of anything terrible that human nature is doing.
Yes.
I think
there was a great human nature knocked down those trees, right? And there was a protest of 83,000,000 people. That's a naughty thing to do.
83,000 people.
Yeah.
Protesting about a row of trees in Lewis.
In the precinct.
Well, why has this not been publicised in the Sussex Express?
Because the Sussex Express, as my good friend James McCleary, who's just got the seat,
yes, good
pal of mine, he said, what did he say? He says, unfortunately, the Sussex Express is not a very good paper. And after we're going to get over this, I want you to help me build up a media situation we told you that, didn't I?
Yeah.
I said, well, there's only me and Keith and John May. And it turns out that it's not. I mean, there was a lots of other journalists in town. For example, when I was in Lewis Arms, one guy came up and he told me he was a travel writer, a travel journalist, and so forth and so on. So what? See, now that James has got the job, he wants to sort of get up a body of media that is actually going to talk about issues in the district, which is rather good, I think, rather a good idea. Gives me something to do anyway.
I think, Alex, it might be interesting to get your view on the fact that local media has been devastated over the last decade. A Harvard review, and I'm rather a fan of Harvard reviews because whatever else, they're very deep and well researched, shows that, partly because of big business and so on, and partly because of owners of major media, has shrunk enormously and frighteningly. I mean, to think that this potty little television station broadcasting out of a pub is virtually the only television interest in Lewis. It's a bit frightening. Shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, but the trouble with small papers, all the rest of it, they really were lost when all the advertising's gone.
Yes,
You know,
that's right.
the little advertising, not the big advertising. That would say, you know, where they're not doing it anymore.
I think it's tragic what's happening to local media, not just in Lewis, but across the country.
Yes. Across the world, actually, yeah.
Well, yes.
Western world.
Because, in a sense, local media are the pulse of a community.
Yes, agree.
And they can do so much.
Yeah.
And dear old John Eccles, who used to be the chief reporter of the Sussex Express, was reputed to have said he would do any story so long as it didn't involve him in travelling more than 3 miles from the Gardener's Arms. People like that, who could keep their fingers on the pulse, could really could help a community to tell a story about itself, to keep people informed.
Absolutely, I agree with you totally. Yeah.
I look at the Sussex Express, and time and again I think, what a shame. You know, I opened it the other day, and there was a photo spread with I think 8 pictures, each one of which had exactly the same caption. And I think, look, if that's the best you can do, it's a shame, because you've got good journalists. I'm not criticising them, but somehow you haven't got the facilities to do the job properly. And I wish to goodness they did have, because we need them. And there ought to be not just Mirador doing what you do to tell us about ourselves, to help us to tell each other about ourselves, but we need printed media,
Yes, we do.
which a lot of people still think is worth supporting, worth getting,
Yes.
because it's going to tell us.
Absolutely.
So, in answer to your question, bring back the Sussex Express in what it used to be 30, 40, 50 years ago. Give them the technology to do the job, and stop breathing down their necks so that they're doing, for instance, centre spreads time after time about dogs waiting for adoption. I am a dog lover. I don't like to think of dogs waiting to be adopted, but I don't think that is the most important news about Lewis time after time.
Yeah.
We need proper media that can do their job. We haven't got them. It's not the media's fault, it's the proprietor's fault to some degree.
Well, that's what James has done. But also, I think, I don't know if you know James.
I heard him speak.
Yeah. I think he's like Norman was. He's a very good local MP. Yeah, very, very. Isn't he, Keith?
Well, you questioned him about his intentions on that. And he said that, yes, he would like to follow in the footsteps of Norman Baker, who was indeed an exceptional constituency MP. And I mean, you can travel around the district and you can talk to people, and there's always somebody who says, "Oh yes, he helped me with." So I think that his bona fides for being a good constituency MP, I'm talking about Norman now, were excellent. And if in fact James is going to follow in his footsteps, now I think it can only be to our benefit, Alex.
Yes, I agree. I think James has got a lot to be said for him.
In fact, Norman now has gone into the media. He gets in the Observer and various other ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the greatest thing about James in my book is that, like me, he's a Liverpool man. There can't be much wrong with him at that point.
Absolutely not. Everybody's going to say now, that's where the Beagles came from.
Yes, indeed it is. They were rather after my time. Never mind about that. But I think I've got high hopes of James that he will be good for this community, for this town, and the places round about it. And I was an admirer of Norman. I didn't vote for him in the end, much to his annoyance. He used to upbraid me about it. But this was because of what the coalition was doing.
Yeah.
I think it was not good.
Well, that's what did him the tuition fees, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think they let many people down by doing that. But that wasn't Norman's fault. And Norman, as Norman, I would have happily gone on to do it. there we are.
Alex, I mean, you're really here because you have a very distinguished track record in the world of environment, and that has actually become quite controversial. Where do you see the environmental debate at the moment?
I see it as pretty well stagnating, I think that there's a lot of people who have good ideas about it, but are not able to do much about implementing them, about getting governments to take them seriously. I think the record to date of the present government is not encouraging. The way it has said we will do this, that, and the other, and it has rowed back on its undertaking. So I think that needs to change considerably to go back to its promises and start living up to them. I think actually we've got it wrong about the environment. We think that if we can do a number of things we say we'll do, then it will be all right. What we need to be doing is accepting that we can't do everything that we need to do. We need to accept that the best we can hope for is to, I won't say balance things, but to settle for something that is going to do the best we can, and that we can't do everything.
For example, we're talking about this because climate change. When climate change, I went to once at a sustainability meeting, and it turns out that they said we are going to get zero carbon emissions by 2030. Well, why? That needs money, basically.
And what, sorry?
That needs money.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And is that money there? That's the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think that we shall achieve everything we think we'd like to achieve, not without making changes.
Yeah.
And change is something that people are often not very keen on.
Yeah.
For instance, transport. Are we going to be all of us using electric cars, and where is the money going to come from for the precious metals and things of that sort that you need to make it possible?
Well, lithium's the electric cars. Lithium is very important for an electric car.
Yeah.
And also, when you, it's really quite funny, really, because it comes from Cornwall. So I got, when I was still doing Greenbow, you know, I remember that Cornwall used to have a tin industry, and I finally found that there was a lithium mine down there. So I wrote a column called Cornish Lithium, and I put it on my website, and it went right to the bloody, loads and loads of money, and that was the whole point. That and also you've got now the problem you've got with electric car now is that basically as it's an earth, and it's shortage. There's a shortage of it, so you can't, you can't. And also, there's the problem of density of lithium cars. Density means how many times can you do in a certain place? How far would it get you, for example? What is the density? 300 miles? Who knows? Yeah. So it's very, very difficult, isn't it?
It seems to me, Alex, that the argument is coming back. Is climate change natural, or is it man oriented? What's your view?
It's both.
Both,
Climate has been changing since the dot.
Yeah.
It's changing a lot more now because of what humans are doing.
Yeah.
And we have to accept that we are responsible. For instance, the fact that it's continuing to stream with rain in July. People don't like it. They say, "Oh, you don't mind it, but what's happened to the weather?"
What's happened to time in June? Yeah.
Well, what's happened to the weather? What's happened to the weather is that we have altered it. We are altering it. And I think that we need to realise that. We need to realise that we have to change in order to moderate, to reduce are effect on the other. And that's going to be, for instance, changing the food we eat. We can't expect to go marching into Tesco's or wherever it is,
Waitrose.
and then, or Waitrose if you're a Waitrose shopper, and seeing stuff there that's been imported from heaven knows where across the world and saying, oh, I want to have that, I want to have strawberries and Christmas. This doesn't work. We need to live more in harmony with nature. That's going to mean reducing our impact on it. And if we can accept that, and if we can accept that we can't continue to exploit our nature, then there's that hope. But we can't expect to go on as we are. If we try to do that, we're doomed. And that's far, far more dangerous than anything that human nature may or may not be doing. And incidentally, I haven't heard anything about what we all talk about human nature being threats. That's something.
Yeah, but we got a house in Shetland, right?
In Shetland.
Yeah, in Ulster, and there's a lot of wind blows up there. Right? So I had a small car. We had a small car, and the wind blew normally, and we put all that energy through electrolysis, right? So that got rid of the nitrogen, and we were left with hydrogen. So we actually had a hydrogen car, and that actually had a great thing because it had a great long. What's this? It had a long way to go. It could go give you a long ride. So I said, well, he said, look, this is a hydrogen car. Would you like to drive it? I said, yeah. He said, well, how far would it get me? Oh, he said it gets you down to Lerwick, 50 miles away. And he said, oh, fine. Yeah. And when he lived there, I said, well, he said, I said, well, how will I get back? And he said, that's the problem. and he said that because, right, there were no hydrogen cars because there was no fueling shot. And there are no fueling shots because there's no cars. You know, it's the egg and what's it called? The problem is that you can't. Well, look, the egg before the what's the egg before the what's it? No, hang on a sec. You know, you can't.
Chicken before the egg is what you're saying. Alex, the deputy premier, prime minister, the new one, has said we want to build 1,500,000 houses in the term of this parliament. I mean, you are in Green. You ran for the Green Party on one occasion, as I recall, and you are a very strong environmentalist. And despite the fact that I sometimes am quite bullish about business and so on, I freeze every time anyone wants to cut a tree down. I just hate it. Is how real and how desirable is it to target 1,500,000 new houses in the country?
Well, if you say it's not realistic and we're not going to do it, then you're consigning many young people to living with their parents for heaven knows how long. I don't know what your parents were like. Mine were decent, honest, and the best. Probably yours did the same.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean to say that we want to live with them forever, or they want us to live with them forever.
Well, it was the terrible Mrs. Margaret White Thatcher. She got rid of council houses, and that's lasted, you know. Council houses.
That's one of the things for which, one of the many things for which we should hold Mrs. Thatcher responsible. And she didn't do us any good by doing so. Had she said that the councils could keep the money that they raised from selling council houses, that would have been a different thing. There would have been a hope giving young people a chance of housing when they were growing up. No, she wrote that off. I think it's a disaster, and it needs turning around.
Yeah.
Because I mean, one of my sons has just bought a house. He's lucky been able to do it, but it's been difficult for him. And I think that is something you see writ large over the country now. People who want to buy somewhere, who will say, looking at places in Lewis, oh yes, I was born in that street. I used to like it, but I couldn't afford it now. What sort of world is that?
Mm.
It's dreadful.
Let me put the cat amongst the pigeons, because you said our parents didn't want us to stay with them forever, but the generation before that was known for the fact that families occupied the same house with uncles and aunts and so on and so forth, and were quite caring towards those members of the family. For instance, I had some very good friends. And I was always grateful to them because they actually took me as a young boy and taught me sort of how to dine properly, and they taught me about wine and so on. But they had in the same household, they had auntie who never married. They had a daughter who was mentally challenged, and they had a son who stayed with them until he was 35 or so on. And that family unit was so close, I envied them. But we don't do that anymore. So if I said, why don't we go back to that? What would you say to me?
I would say someone took you in as a young boy.
You got to remember.
You'll never see.
You got to remember after the war, the council houses got built, didn't they? Because I was brought up in a council house.
Yes, it was a big building.
Yeah.
No, I think people do need, they expect rightly, and they need somewhere to grow up with their own families and spread their wings and not be dependent on their parents. I think it's perfectly reasonable that younger people do expect that now. And it's
Well, actually,
possible.
I can tell you, I have given my children houses.
Yeah.
Do you know why? Well,
Get rid of them.
I made a lot of money when I was doing oil barrel, which everybody didn't like.
Right, Tuesday, thanks.
But there you are.
Yeah, but I would also
Did I
say,
get a thank you? No.
I would also say, Alex, that whereas I admire what you're saying about how young people should be encouraged to spread their wings and so on, and yet the sort of problems of loneliness with older people is 75 years ago weren't the loneliness problems that we're experiencing today.
I think you're talking about two separate things and running them together. I'm completely for ending loneliness if we can find a way to do it. And we probably can, which is not being so intent on advancing our own interests as we perceive them. I mean, the people who want to have several holidays abroad every year, the people who want to have the latest model of car and to be dining off the best food available, I think those are not doing themselves any good or society. I think they're intent on simply looking after themselves. And I think that we need to learn not to do that. We need to learn to care for each other. And there again, I go back to Caroline Lucas, who I think is a paradigm example of someone who talked about doing that and who did it herself. So yes, let's end loneliness by all means. I'm absolutely for that. But I don't think ending loneliness requires us to abandon the idea of making sure that there are houses for everyone who needs them and wants them. And okay, you don't build them around the best parts of Sussex or the best parts of anywhere else. That's a different matter. But I think that we need to tackle all of them at once.
Yes. Okay. Let me just take you up on the point of it being a different matter about where we build. Do you think that the building industry allows us to look at brownfield sites as much as we look at greenfield sites?
No, I don't think it does. I think we need to look more at brownfield or greyfield sites. Greyfield, did you talk about greyfield here?
Yeah, that's what they're talking about now. What's in between?
But you talked about it on Mirador.
My daughter, when she was doing this, she went up to Newcastle and she went to a brown site and said, "No, you can't build here. You can't do it because there's too much nastiness in the brown soil."
Well, that's almost certainly true that there is.
Yeah.
And you need to be very careful where you build. But there are ways now, I think, in many cases, of removing the pollutants from the soil so you can build there safely and so you are not putting people at risk. But I mean, it seems to me that what we have got to learn is a way of sharing what we've got, sharing within Sussex, within Britain, within the world at large. It's only that way, by sharing, that we shall manage to make the world habitable for all of us, rather than saying, "Oh well, we'll take what we can get and we'll."
And that's what Starmer's saying. You know, for everybody.
For Starmer.
This is what's interesting about Starmer. He's not a communist like the other one was. Corbyn was.
The other one?
Corbyn.
No, he was not a communist.
Well, he was bordering on it.
No, I don't think he was bordering on it. He was a socialist, which is a different matter.
Oh, I disagree with you. I think Keir Starmer is a socialist, but he wasn't, and he did really silly things, didn't he?
Who?
Corbyn backed the IRA, said that this woman was that, and so forth and so on. It was dreadful.
I don't think Starmer is a socialist. I think he's a well-meaning, what would you call him? I wouldn't, certainly not a socialist.
I think he's a carer. He is a carer. And that is a carer, you know, he's looking after this person, he's looking after that person, he wants all kinds of things like that. I think he's a socialist.
All right.
Yeah.
We need to redefine our terms before we go much further.
Well, Alex, you just asked a question about what does Mirador do? And actually, I think that John Henty put it succinctly when he sat down and said to his audience, he appears every Thursday, he said, "No, madam, we do not have a script." He said, "I haven't a clue what we're talking about when I sit down." And actually this morning, nobody briefed you. You were kind enough to say we'd come along. So what we're doing is we're getting your ideas. And if the first time that I heard on Mirador, it's because we're very happy to have you as an individual and your thoughts and express them. And that's the best way to get a message over, I think.
2 points there, Keith. If you get me on Mirador, I'm flattered, but you must be desperate. And secondly, I thought two young fellows like you, it was worth a try because you couldn't do any damage.
On the contrary, you know very well that coming to your house and sitting down and talking to you is one of the pleasures of my life. In fact, the big problem is that people will not get up in the morning, and articulate people such as yourself and knowledgeable people and come more frequently than say once every so often. I would lay out a challenge, which I have in the past, and you've never taken it up, is come in more frequently, come in once a month and let us hear some of your ideas, because they are well worthwhile propounding and they are well worthwhile for our audience, which is probably is the older side of things, but well worthwhile, but listening to somebody such as yourself.
Tell you what, Keith, I'll see you behind the bike sheds later and we'll work out something.
Right.
Well, I'll give you another one, because one of my, I decided to Keith, we decided to have this podcast called, it wasn't an interview, it was a conversation with people, which makes it much easier. And actually, I said, right, I'm going to go, well, when I was at Financial Times, which I worked for forever, it seemed, there was an alumni situation. And I went there, and about 3 or 4 of them, I got them and said, would you like to do a time with my what would we call it? What would we call what we do? Would you like to come out have a conversation with Stewart?
Yeah, a conversation with Stewart as opposed to an interview.
Yeah, and then one of my friends from the Financial Times was David Lennon, and his wife happened to be an Israeli. And and I said, would you like to do something? And he went right through the whole thing. He said, the thing about what's going on now goes right back to the Holocaust, okay? It meant that after the Holocaust, an awful lot of American Jews went to America.
When they're in America,
where? And a lot of them went to places like Boston and New York, and this gave them incredible voting power. So what obtained was that the Americans has to support Israel, otherwise the Prime Minister would lose his job, because they've got to support Israel against the Palestinians. And that's what's been happening ever since. The only person who got near to doing it was Jimmy Carter, where to get that situation that the Middle East sorted out. And then there's some wonderful broadcasts, haven't we, Keith?
We never know what's going to happen on Mirador. We really don't, and that gives us a good variety of things and debates and viewpoints. That's why I am going to encourage you to appear, and I'll give you another reason why I'd like to see you here frequently, Alex, is because we've been going 3/4 of an hour now, yes, and it seems like 10 minutes, and we haven't even scratched the surface of what we would like to talk about. And the one thing that we are very, very grateful for is Declan looking after us.
Yes.
And this morning I promised him that we're going to be off by 11:15, which is just 3/4 of an hour, because do you know what he's going to do? He's going to watch the first ball of the first test being bowled at Lord's this morning at 11 o'clock.
I think you better let's go home and give the cat his breakfast.
But we've got people's books really taken off, haven't we? Ian Gill's one, looking for Ian Gill, a guy at University. He's half Chinese, and he had a fantastic story to tell, didn't he, about his mother being taken over by in Hong Kong by what was he done by? He was doing by all the Chinese people were taking over her, and also that, and then she ended up in the UN, didn't she? And looking. I just got the book, looking for the story of Billy. Yeah. Lovely book. Yeah, amazing.
Oh yes, I remember. I mean, you've had a whole variety of people on. But just before we go, Alex, we are a small operation. We run on a shoestring, but with persistence, our audience is growing, which shows, and you know very well that it takes quite a time to build an audience. But our audience is building, and we're getting nice comments that, my God, you're unusual. In fact, unique and quirky, and all sorts of things. But if that is the future of local television, then we're very happy to be pursuing that course.
Quirky. Quirky.
Oh, we're quirky.
What do we get? What have we got? We get about 5,000, don't we?
Actually, if you use the old newspaper thing, it's probably over a period of a week we get about 15,000. At any given time, we may have as few as 4 or 5. But what happens is, because it's on the internet and social media, is we get quite a large audience out of LinkedIn, which is sort of tends to be the business side and the
Do you
intellectual
know how
side.
many?
Of it.
I don't know. I didn't do that. I've got what 4,700 from LinkedIn. But a lot of those are from Sussex University because that's where I was.
Well,
So I go, yeah. So
yeah.
I go. I've got 4,700 followers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy that we appeal very cross section, and the only other thing I would say to you is that we've had a really good spirited debate, which you and I always do, but I try to run this station without any isms. Any isms. We don't have anybody. We don't have big business telling us what we should do, what we should talk about. We have no problems with feminism or racism or anything. Everything is open to decent, honest debate, and I think that people like that as well.
We just tell stories, basically. Yeah. Yeah.
I think we're only a squire at the moment, but we would like to be the king.
Well, with a hat like that, you can't.
Well, as I say, people in the street stop me and say, I like your hat. But I say, they remember the hat. And when in the winter, they remember the scarf. They never remember the face.
No, I remember. When we were in the White Hart, right?
The White Hart?
Yeah, White Hart Hotel. Yes, and anyway, he went to next door and said, do any of you know or have seen our energy expert, Stewart Dalby? And the next day, there were 2,000 people responding. And I thought, what? I thought 2,000 people might know me. I'll tell you why. When I was doing television in Ireland, okay, I used to go up to Belfast on the Sunday train, right? And I used to go with the smugglers. And a bloke came up to me and he said, "Now, didn't I see you in a television the other day? I'm sure it was you." And I said, no, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. I didn't do it.
You don't have to disown yourself.
Well, one of the things that we're very proud of, and it is true, is we've got somebody in Patagonia who tunes in, and the other day it appeared on viewers' comments, somebody from Uzbekistan. And I remember that you and I made a pitch for a job in Uzbekistan at one stage.
Yes, we did.
Yes, on environmental reporting.
God, you didn't want it. I've been to Uzbekistan.
We must go, but Alex I shall talk to you now about coming on regularly because it's been a delight. I haven't seen you for almost 6 months. Last day is I always spend Christmas Day with Alex and his family, and it is a wonderful experience. But I haven't seen you since then because, as you say, you lack energy, I lack energy. That between us, we've actually generated some energy this morning, which is rather exciting. So let's keep it up.
We must put our heads together and see what happens.
Good, excellent.
The counterweights.
Okay, don't get out of your seats just for a moment, because I'm just going to say, Toodle Pip, thank you for being with us. It's Stewart Dalby's Conversations, and Alex Kirby was the guest this morning, and I hope that he's perhaps going to become more than a guest on Mirador. But for me, Keith Hayes, Toodle Pip.
That might be ruled out of order.